Hi again. So, we're starting in on parabolas, and a parabola is basically a U-shaped graph. Okay? It's basically a U-shaped graph, just like any one of these here. All parabolas will actually be in a U shape, and they'll be in a U either opening upwards or opening downwards. So, let's examine some of the characteristics of a parabola. Okay. So we've got the graph of y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c is a parabola with these following characteristics. Okay? Our parabola here is going to open up, so again it's going to look like this, if a, our a value here, is greater than 0. So as long as it's some positive number. And it's going to open down if a is less than 0, or it's a negative number. The parabola is going to be wider than the graph y is equal to x squared if the absolute value of a is less than 1. So whether it's positive or negative, if it's somewhere between -1 and 0 or 0 and positive 1, we're going to take and go from a regular x, we're going to stretch it out, it's going to be a little bit wider. Okay? And this graph will also be more narrow if the graph it will be more narrow than the graph y is equal to x squared if that absolute value of a is greater than 1. So again, if it's 1 or more, or -1 or any less than that, then it's going to be a more narrow graph. Okay? Now, the x-coordinate of the vertex, and if you remember, the vertex is that either highest point when we've got a downward-facing parabola, it's the highest point up in the middle, or it's the very lowest point of our graph. It's smack dab in the middle, and that's going to have a coordinate point of the opposite of b that we see up here, divided by 2 times my a value. So the opposite of b divided by 2 times a is the x-coordinate. To find your y-coordinate, you're just going to plug that back into whatever your equation is. Okay? And then we're talking about this thing called an axis of symmetry, and that's the vertical line. Again, vertical lines have x equals with no y's affecting them. So it's x is equal to the opposite of b divided by 2a. So you can see that the vertex and this axis of symmetry are pretty similar. They almost have the same formula for them. Again, they're both opposite of b divided by 2 times a, but this axis of symmetry is a line. Okay, so that's a line, and this x-coordinate, that's just going to be part of a point that we're going to find. Okay? A couple of different examples here. I've got a white graph, a green graph, and a blue graph. Well, my white graph is the graph y is equal to x squared. So that's that parent graph that we were talking about. Okay? And it's going to have points that run, I can make a quick xy chart here. Again, y is equal to x squared. So if we go from a -2 times a -2 is a +4. So at -2, we're up at +4. At a -1, -1 times -1, it's going to be a +1. So -1, +1. At 0, 0 times 0 is 0. And you see that right there. +1, again, now you're going to see these things repeat. Okay? +1 to +1. Okay, and +2 times +2 is going to give me a +4. And that's really what creates that whole U shape. Okay? Because the positive and negative values don't really matter, because they're both returning these same types of values here. Okay? As far as the green graph here, we've got y is equal to 1/2 times x squared plus 2x plus 2. Now, you can see generally my graph is about like this. Okay, we've got our two branches of this parabola y equals x squared, and when I come to 1/2, again, this exhibits the property where our parabola is wider than our parent graph if a value for us, that 1/2, is less than 1. Well, 1/2 is less than 1, so it only makes sense that this is going to be a wider graph. Okay? On the opposite side, actually both literally and figuratively, we've got in the blue graph here, y is equal to -2x squared plus 4x minus 2. And you see that because this a value, because again it's ax squared plus bx plus c, and because this a value is negative, our parabola opens down. Again, it opens down if a is less than 0. Okay, so it's opening down, and because the a value is actually, the absolute value of a is greater than 1, our graph is going to be more narrow. And you can see there, again, just rough approximation, here's my hands following it. If I turn them upside down, okay, now I come like this, you can see that, yes, it is more narrow, okay? So these are the properties that we're going to be working with, especially when we start to graph.